ahead and call the meeting.
That's true.
I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting order. We can stand, pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner Elson.
Here.
Commissioner Phipps.
Here.
Commissioner Weingart.
Here.
Commissioner Engstrom.
Present.
Commissioner Blomgren.
Present.
Vice Chair Janowski and Commissioner Miles are absent, and Chair Casisa.
Present.
Thank you.
I'm going to open the meeting up for public comment and just note that there is no public, so I'll close public comment. And with that, we'll
That's
move
not public? They aren't the public?
Parks and Recs and then presentation. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn over to, we'll do presentation, Skunk Hollow Playground Improvement Option. Do an introduction?
Thank you, Chair Casisa and the Commission. I'd like to introduce you to Nick Philbin, who is, among other things, designer, president, owner, I think longtime advocate for children's playgrounds, and worked with Ross Recreation for several years with some designs for different parks, and specifically in Skunk Hollow. We've been talking recently about some upgrades to it. So Nick's here to give you a very brief overview of some of the drawings that we've received in the past and kind of what we can work with and look at in terms of the space inside Skunk Hollow. So I want to thank him for being here and have him walk you through and help answer some questions regarding sort of initial process that we might have looking at in terms, and then have the commission think about some public process that we'll be looking at for outreach for our community in regards to Skunk Hollow. We also do have here our Public Works Superintendent and one of our town engineers, RJ and Jamie King, so they might be able to give a little added insight in terms of maintenance and operations and general project planning for that specific site. This is something that we're looking at budgeting for the fiscal year 1920, so we're eager to start.
1920?
Yeah.
19-20.
19, yeah, sorry, fiscal year 19.
2019 to
Sorry, fiscal year 19.
Have I entered a time machine?
Fiscal year 1920. So, yeah, it sounds a little confusing, I apologize. This is an initial conversation, and we'll be looking at planning that public outreach in the next few months. So, Nick, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And I'll turn it over to him just to kind of walk you through some of these drawings and schematics on the site itself.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Thanks a lot for having me. So,
You can just use the mic because we're being recorded.
Sorry, yeah.
Thanks.
make it formal.
So very official.
Yeah, my name's Nick Philbin. I'm with Ross Recreation. We're basically a distributor for park and recreation equipment. So one of the one of the manufacturers we work with is Landscape Structures. Been in business since '73. We're based out of Santa Rosa. So Mario asked me to come down and just kind of give you an overview of this project. That these designs were actually done back in 2015. So I wasn't part of the initial design process, but I just wanted to be here really to be a resource for you all for the questions as you start making considerations for making changes at Skunk Hollow. So our design approach is taking a site like Skunk Hollow, input from community members, yourselves, the town, and then designing a playground specific to the site. So there's, I guess, two things. We were just talking that there's two age groups that playground equipment is broken into, 2 to 5 and then 5 to 12. This design was initially done for the 5 to 12 age group. We've literally put in thousands of playgrounds throughout the Bay Area. We've been in business, like I said, since '73. So our approach is very design-driven, where it's a modular system, meaning that you can pick and choose. So if, say, a school wanted more fitness-focused or more slides, we'll design to that, along with the age group or whatever it may be. So this is just the entrance, just to familiarize yourself. This would be the front of the park coming into the park. So this is not, I believe there's a concrete pad there, so I believe this ramp was not, the intention was to have a different concrete pad poured for this ramp to come off of.
Yeah, actually, real briefly, I just want to throw in that the design that you see in front of you, which was done in 2015, was the purpose was to basically put it into the space that we already had. So we there's a lot of consideration for ADA accessibility in terms of how the structure would be laid out. It's a conceptual plan at this point. This is what we have on file. Excuse me. So in terms of what we would be looking forward to recommend, it would be a much more accessible site to begin with. So some of these options would not necessarily be necessary.
And there's
So-
nothing there now?
Oh, there's a
very
playground.
old.
Yeah,
Old structure.
an old structure. Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, question based upon what you just said
Yeah.
before. What would, and again, I know this is only conceptual, what would you change in there then? Because I think you said this is mostly for 5 to 12-year-olds?
Yeah, we were talking about the 2 to 5 age group and how that neighborhood, it seems to be that there's more toddlers, 3, 4, 5-year-olds that are using the park. So in that case, you see some of the higher deck elevations, those are 5, 6 feet high off the ground. So for a 2 to 5 age group, we usually are designing playgrounds that are no higher than 4 feet off the ground. So that's the first consideration. Some of those slides wouldn't be appropriate for the younger age group as well. This also took up the entire space as it is right now. For that younger age group, we typically do more of a main structure and then various independent pieces. So maybe a little spinner or a little dome that they can go in and over, things like that. So that's, I mean, I think when we met out there, there was some consideration for changing the site of moving some of the curbs and the sidewalks. And to Mario's point, it would provide greater accessibility and then also more options for when you're designing a playground in the space. So that would be my recommendation, but again, there's costs associated with that.
Right.
So
So would that mean expanding the footprint or leaving pretty much the footprint where it is now?
I think a little of both.
Okay.
I think just the access coming in is a little challenging for users, especially if they're using mobility devices or even just strollers. And there was kind of that picnic area I think we talked about, or
Yeah.
I guess that'd be to the west. There's some trees there that we talked about potentially expanding. When one designs a playground, something to consider is that there are what are called use zones, so a 6-foot buffer from the play equipment to a curb or a bench or a tree. So when you have a real tight area like you kind of do here, it makes it more challenging to design, or just limits your design and your options that you can put in there, so.
And then I'm the question guy.
Right.
Right now, sand is there.
Yeah.
What would you recommend for, and again, I know it's only concept right now.
Right.
What would you recommend for a surface?
Yeah, so everything that we design and every play space we put together, there's 2 key things that we're following. One is safety. So we're ensuring that all of our designs meet the California safety standards for playground equipment, CPSC. Second is ADA. To your question about surfacing, sand is not an accessible surface. So we would definitely not recommend sand. So we would recommend engineered wood fiber, which is a wood chip. There's Port in Place, which is a rubberized surfacing that probably, hopefully been on. It's a squishy surface made out of rubber. There's tiles, and then we're doing more of artificial turf. So those 4 options all meet ADA. They all meet the safety standards. So those would be the ones that we would offer. They all have different price points, all maintenance needs, things like that. So 4 different options of surfacing.
And then more, would they handle like replacing the picnic benches, or if we want to add more picnic benches, or is that on Public Works?
It depends on how we design the final physical site.
Okay.
Ross Recreation luckily has a lot of different benches and tables
Okay.
and barbecues and things that
I don't mean to cut you guys out of it. but-
that they have. But in terms of the design of the footprint of the actual final, I don't know what best to call it, but the site before we actually put a structure in would most likely be handled by our internal engineering staff.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but that's
Well,
what we're
you're,
hoping.
you're being recorded.
Yeah.
Too late. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
I'm just thinking, I'm up here right now. Well, no, you have young kids using the play areas too. It'll say, 2 to 5-year-olds, but I feel like any kid 4 and above is probably going to gravitate more towards something like this,
Absolutely right.
So if you design an entire play area for kids that are 2 to 5, they're going to outgrow it really quickly. I feel like by the time they're 3, they're going to be, done with it. So I feel like we need to have some higher level stuff. But are we planning on having, a community meeting like we did with the skate park to get the people's input?
Absolutely. This is a very initial broad stroke for the commission's information. We'd be doing some informational meetings with the community. I think it's something that we'd probably talk about on the executive board and see if that's something we want to do over a period of a few months and have 1 or 2 outreach meetings and invite folks to come in or maybe even on site to discuss. Nick and I have discussed a few different options. One for an older set, some for younger, maybe a hybrid. There's different ways to do it and approach it. So it's something that we certainly look forward to hearing from the commission as well as the community, as well as Public Works about the maintenance side of it.
Will you take into consideration, if you are at this playground and continue south into the neighborhood that's in what used to be the open field out there, there's basically a 2 to 5-year-old playground.
There is.
That's not a town playground, but it is publicly accessible. So just 100 yards away, there's a playground for smaller kids.
It's not a town, what is it?
It's part of a homeowners association.
Part of Madera del
Okay.
Presidio.
So I don't know if you want to
Right.
consider that that's something for the younger set and this could be something for the older set, or whether we want to treat it independently.
Definitely something to consider.
I think that when you have a younger sibling and an older sibling, that would be sort of splitting up a family. But I like the idea of combining both ages at one park, really, to keep a family together.
I think one thing, just for the commission's information, I mean, Nick and I have walked the site extensively, and one thing we did talk about was really actually potentially expanding the site as much as we could, expanding the footprint, and really bringing some other, as Nick described, just some other zones in which we could have some options for younger kids. I wouldn't say sky's the limit, but we do have a very particular piece of property there that it's funky. It's an odd little piece of property. It's basically a sliver of land that the original designer of the community developer there didn't have any use for, so they deeded it to the town, and the town with the community volunteers built a park there. So we're lucky to have it. It's definitely a very unique pocket park style, and I think we have a really good opportunity to do some improvements there. But it's also bear in mind the scale of which we're looking at and the specific community it serves. I think it's a few things that we would take into consideration.
The other thing also that we could, again, I know it's only concept, we could also phase stuff in too.
Absolutely.
I mean, by that I mean, if we want to go with, maybe expand the footprint, so the footprint is laid out, but we don't put playground equipment on part of it, but at least the infrastructure's there. So a year or 2 years after this is done, we don't have to build that out. We can just put in the playground part of it, or something to that effect.
Yeah, we do a lot of that with schools. Like a PTA is fundraising. They may only have X amount for the first phase, but we'll do a full-blown design like this so they kind of have a roadmap of where they are going. But
Right.
yeah, that's a great point of, you always want to do your infrastructure first so you have the space to expand into at a future date. Landscape structures, just how their clamping system basically, how it connects to the post, it's very easy to come out, add on in a second phase, or we do a lot with what are called retrofits of just kind of updating, facelifting older equipment after 10, 20 years. So
Another question also, is part of your design, does that include, I want to say, landscaping around there? In other words, like you mentioned, I know there's trees up against the back fence.
Yeah.
I know there's bushes on the street side.
Right.
Does that include going, is it just like, okay, this is what we do here, and then anything else is on Public Works? Or is it the whole concept going, okay, this is what it's going to look like, including this part, but we don't do the tree part, we just do
Yeah.
the playground part?
Personally, I love to garden and love plants and everything, so I'd give my own recommendations. But as far as Ross Recreation, we focus primarily on the playground equipment and
Okay.
the play areas. We work a lot with landscape architects, so they'll come to us to design just to the play area, and that's typically where they're doing the planting or fields and things like that. So we don't get into the plant selection for landscaped areas, even though I would enjoy doing that. It's just kind of outside of our scope of our expertise.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's primarily, and we can also give recommendations for, I talked about access a little bit and ADA. We can give recommendations for that to the play area. But that's, again, we're not designers in that regard.
Right.
So, but when it comes to the playground equipment, that's our expertise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Okay, I'm going to open it, we have public. I'm going to open up for public comment. Okay, I'll close public comment. Thanks, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, just one last comment.
Oh, I'm sorry,
because,
go ahead.
I just wanted to, this was quoted back in 2015 about $33,000, $34,000. You know, a lot of times I think with commercial playground equipment, people aren't aware of the costs associated with it. So in today's dollars, something like this would be roughly $40,000, materials only. So then there's installation, there's the surfacing, there's the infrastructure work. So I think I tell people that there's usually kind of three factors that come into play when you're looking at a playground project: the site, the budget, and the vision. So we've kind of talked about the site, the vision, and so the other factor would be the budget. So definitely something to consider when you're looking at this project.
Okay, but Mario said we locked in the 2015 prices.
I was not aware of that, but
He hedged.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
so yeah, I just want to make that comment. So that's all. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate your time.
Yep, absolutely.
Nick, thank you so much, appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Nothing under consent calendar, Park and Rec Director and Commissioner reports, any report from town council meetings?
No, I'm sorry, I
okay.
don't have one.
Anything on town council meetings? I don't think there was there? Park and Rec related?
We're good.
Okay. Executive advisory,
Is there anything pertinent coming up in the next one? Because I think I'm out of town for, the next one's coming up next week, right? Next Monday?
Part of it will be what we discuss here tonight, will be our fee resolution.
I can cover that if needed.
We cover that one?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I can do that.
Since you missed the last one.
Executive Advisory Committee, we met last Friday. We pretty much discussed the fee resolution, and then we did talk about Skunk Hollow also. But the bulk of it was on the fee resolution, which we're going to be talking about under business items. Is there anything on the IGC Programming Ad Hoc Committee? Are they not met?
We're
We
meeting
haven't
later, we're
met.
meeting later this week,
Yeah.
Thursday.
Okay. And commissioners have anything else to report? No? Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Stay dry.
Yeah, likewise.
5.2 Park and Recreation Directors Report updates. Mario?
I want to start off with RJ and Jamie here, just to get them, back home and safe and sound. I know Jamie's probably got some extra work to do tonight. Want to talk about a couple things, or some of our capital projects, the basketball court, and then Jamie's going to speak a little bit to the commission about maintenance items in the park, our field specifically. So I really appreciate you guys being here tonight. Thank you.
So do we.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mario and I talked and thought it'd be good for a check-in and just kind of create a dialogue and start answering some questions and kind of see where things go. I was going to let Jamie start off and focus on kind of what's been going on the maintenance side for the last few months and kind of what to look forward to in the next few months. So come on up, Jamie.
All right, good evening, good evening. All right, so as of July 2018, we installed prior to that, we installed a device from HydroPoint. It's a satellite-based irrigation system, pretty elaborate system. So just recently, we learned, probably in July, that we were having some irrigation issues. With this system, it takes account the weather, if you will, and then it takes that information and applies it into a data system, and then that night, it'll apply the water to the fields. What we learned is this system doesn't account for this special kind of climate that we have here in Corte Madera. We also had this challenge in Petaluma in my prior employment at Petaluma City Schools, as when it's foggy during the morning, it doesn't count for that coolness and applies it throughout the day when that fog burns off and it hits 90 degrees. Well, it doesn't know how to decipher that temperature. So what we learned is there was a lot of water being applied to the fields. So what Public Works did is we decided to go manually. And then in addition to that, we made some changes on how we're cutting the grass. We were cutting it at 3.5 inches, 2.5 inches, and then we changed that to 3 inches. And we learned that our root base was actually being established and a lot stronger. So that way our fields could recover quickly. Having said all this, Vernon made some changes upon himself to manually water. Some things that we also realized working with Mario, that we were challenged with understanding what the field's needs were after the fact of all the play and needs from sports. So what we did is we sent out some soil samples to a company and did some soil samples to better understand what our needs were. So after we were learning what our samples were, we learned that that the certain fertilizer that we were using in the past wasn't the correct fertilizer. So now we're going to be using the fertilizer to help recover quicker. In addition to that, we're also going to provide some training via HydroPoint to better understand the system, because it seems like we're working for the system and the system's not really working for us. So anything new, it's a learning curve. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now. I'm also working with Mario to put a better plan together with field maintenance and better understand on some of those times where there are rests, we can maintain the fields and then accomplish what's needed for our athletes.
So does that mean that the fields can be open longer during the year? Or is that a tough one because it's all weather?
Exactly. It all
Like,
depends on,
now?
how much the fields are being used and obviously the weather.
Yeah, okay.
Trying to base, how we're going to accomplish that maintenance time is challenging. But working with Mario and Vernon and myself, we've come a long way. I think we've had some positive feedback from just the last couple of months, and then towards the end of fall, people were pretty pleased on the differences that we made just in that short amount of time.
Right, okay.
Any questions?
Any questions?
So is there any technology for in-ground moisture sensors,
Actually,
essentially,
yes.
rather than aerially? Just because
So-
there's such a variety of wet and dry sections of the park?
That's what this system does. It takes account, there's a lot of parameters in this system. It takes account of the soil, clay, dirt, different types, slopes, obviously the weather takes that account. But yeah, there are sensors that you can put in the ground and help with the weather track. It's pretty expensive.
Right.
That's something I don't see that we need to do. I think right now we're on track. There's another option that we can do where you could actually put cups out to measure. It's a kind of a system where you put measuring cups out certain feet per head and then calculate what's actually being applied. Because just because you're saying that you're applying water and these size rotors apply this water doesn't mean it's actually applying the actual amount. So that's something that we should probably do, is figure out a calculation on what's being applied to the fields. So another thing too I didn't share with you, that we made a correction actually at Cove Park where there was a broken water line several years ago that was replaced with the wrong size. So we realized that we weren't getting proper coverage, head-to-head coverage. So we made that correction this year during the summer, and we've seen amazing results just from that little correction by itself.
Do you see a problem with the geese out there?
Yes. Actually, Mario and I were talking about that, so we are trying to find a solution for that. There was, I think Mario said there was a guy that he had hired in the past to bring a dog out, and then the dogs would chase him away, and it lasts for a little while, and then they'd come right back.
They figure it out. And then do you have any problems with dogs?
Not at all.
Okay. Either people not picking up or in general?
No, it's amazing.
Okay.
Actually, everybody's proactive here. We have a program, as you guys know, that we have the doggy pots out there. Every Tuesday, we're out there filling them up, making sure they're all filled, and
Okay.
everybody's using them.
Okay.
Everybody's using them. Maybe a couple of times we've had some issues, but overall, no. I see.
No, just for background, because the ordinance of Corte Madera is no animals in the park at all. And then we just made a recommendation at our last meeting to align the ordinance with Larkspur and San Anselmo to allow dogs in the park, but on leash only. But it's one of these things, when we did a survey, it was almost split 50-50 between people saying, yeah, they want dogs in the park, and other people saying no. So I was just wondering from you what kind of feedback there was.
Yeah, no, we haven't had any issues. Like I said, everybody's been pretty proactive, taking care of their waste. So yeah, it's been pretty positive.
Okay, maybe you'll see more in a few months. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
So I was going to give a quick update on kind of the project side of things, and then in particular, Mario thought it'd be good to talk about procurement procedures for, the thresholds for, when you have to bid something completely or when you can just hire a contractor. And then also, he said there might be some interest in the water quality requirements if we were to consider looking at a turf field and kind of some of those challenges. So to start out, basically, and this kind of goes for all projects, there's kind of 3 tiers for hiring a contractor with different requirements. The first is $60,000 and less. You can basically negotiate with a contractor for that amount and move forward with that one person. You can also get 3 and kind of pick the one that you like the best. The second tier, we call this informal bidding. It's basically from 60 to 200,000. You would have to create some, basically a spec book and a plan set that really defines all the things that you want, and basically creates that kind of fair bidding procedure for all the contractors to bid on. And then you would, do a formal opening of bids, see who your low contractor is, and you'd go that route. And then for projects over 200, it's similar to informal. The only difference, I think, is you would then go to town council and make sure they approve the project before you get all the bids and all of that. So partly why that's relevant is the basketball courts. Mario's been talking to the company that did the tennis courts, right? First Serve Productions.
Yes.
And so he's got a couple options of kind of ways to improve the basketball courts, and they're kind of all hovering around 60,000. I think one is slightly less, one is right at 60, and one's slightly more. And obviously, I know I'm sure everyone in this room wants to be involved and kind of work through kind of the fine tuning of what the project looked like. And also, there's some folks in the community that want to be involved, and so absolutely, that's something that we want to create that forum and work with you guys and make sure you get all the things that you want. And if we can get it under 60,000, that does really streamline the schedule. It also streamlines the effort on the design side. You can basically, there's a little more trust in that process. You can build a contract and kind of work through it one-on-one with that contractor, whereas once we cross over that threshold, everything has to be, it goes from a 5-page document to a 50-page document, right off the bat. And so it's just a lot more intensive on the design side, and also the schedule to allow for bids and get the word out on the street and obtain bids. It's just a little more. So, if we're able to get all the things that you guys like and we can find a way to get it under 60,000, then, that's going to be a much smoother process. But if we can't, then, we go to, option 2, and we create that, more well-defined, robust bid package, and we go that route.
The 3 bids you mentioned, is that all for the same, the same items for the basketball court? Do you know what I mean? So it's not like one's more because they're adding something that the other do. In other words, they're all equal.
So
as far as what
there are some slight nuances, and I don't know how much Mario has discussed, but yeah, there's a number of different types of hoop options, and without going into the specific model, there's like, the deluxe, super deluxe, and Cadillac, right? So, we can kind of weigh those options and see if, are they all going to meet our needs? Is it only going to be the deluxe and the Cadillac, and kind of go from there? And then also there were some slight differences in the overall area of the basketball court. I think in all cases it's getting a little bigger, but I think I think the 2 more expensive options, they each get like 4 more feet by one side of the court as you move up.
Right. I guess that would make sense, right? Because you don't want to dribble out of bounds and then you're on grass.
Yeah, I mean, I think in all stages, I think the goal is to find a way to get I don't know if it's a high school or college,
Yeah. Like a
court
three-quarter, like a
size.
3/4 size court size.
Yeah.
More college size.
Right.
Let me let him finish, then I can open up for public comment.
So yeah, I don't know what the best form is, if we kind of meet with you guys and kind of work through the issues. Obviously it's going to involve getting the contractor there to kind of talk about the different pieces, but I think that's really the next step, is just fine tuning that package of all the things that you want in the basketball court. Secondly, which is, I think, project.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
go ahead.
question for you. So is the project, I know town council approved funding, right?
Correct.
So is the ball now in your court as far as the process going forward?
So if the funding's approved, if you're ready to go, then it's about us collectively just
Finding.
finding out
Fine-tune
exactly
design.
what we
Okay,
want.
okay.
And then from there, we would assist through the whole process, get the pricing, set up the contract. There's some state requirements with Department of Industrial Relations that we'll handle and take care of. We can stop by and make sure that, everything, all the base rock's being compacted and all the concrete's going in, proper to current best practices, so we can assist with that. But really, yeah, the next step is just fine-tuning all the features that you want, and if we can get it in the right price range.
Okay, because one thing that may help is that we have an executive advisory committee. It consists of 3 commissioners that we meet like on an ad hoc basis to kind of filter through some of this stuff. So when it comes to the commission, it still is open for discussion, but it's more, can't think of the word for it, but it's more like
Refined.
whittled down and refined versus us having like 4 meetings to try to refine it.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind, because that committee, we meet like ad hoc, so it's the type of thing where Mario can send out emails saying, can we meet next Thursday or Friday, whatever works for the 3 of us, and we can get together on something like that. We're just of in mind, like, we want to keep projects moving. I
Yeah.
know weather and stuff like that or bids,
Right.
but we just don't want to do a thing where like, because it's happened in the past, a year and a half or 2 years from now, you're still coming to us saying, we're working on the design. I'm not saying you personally, but you know what I mean? We just want to get it moving to get it in the
Sure.
right direction.
Yeah, do you have a good idea of when your goal is to have it all installed and complete?
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Okay.
RJ, if I could if you just briefly mention a couple things talking about the grading of the current surface that we have there, and maybe a little bit of the drainage that we talked about. Just
Yeah, so, I'll try to check it out tomorrow or the next day, but Mario brought to my attention that there's some drainage issues. So obviously want to take a look at that, fix those before we start investing in a new surface.
Right. You don't want to go out there tonight?
Yeah. Without seeing it for myself, I can't say for sure, but there is that kind of hill that kind of is on one quarter, and I don't know if it's getting trapped there or if it's, hopefully it's not, the surface is just one big bowl, because, then we'd be looking at a more costly, costly design to fix all that.
Right.
So hopefully it's something simple, like either adding a little drain box in one corner and finding a place for it to go. But yeah, we'll take a look.
Right. And just to clarify, we want to keep it moving, but we don't want to do something,
Yeah.
we want to make sure it's done right, you know what I mean? So if it does take longer,
Yeah.
that's fine. We just want to make sure, again, that it moves.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And then, the second topic was, Mario had said you guys are interested in starting a dialogue about maybe doing a turf field in the future. And so mainly I was just going to touch on some of the requirements from the state Regional Water Quality Control Board. And so this is, let's see here, there's kind of 2 main permits that are 2 major kind of hoops that we're going to have to jump through. One is, they call it the Construction General Permit. And so for projects that are greater than an acre, you have to do a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which isn't, I think for this site wouldn't be, extremely difficult, but it is kind of a formal plan, and you have to hire, a qualified professional to draw up kind of how you're going to manage stormwater through your construction. So that's one, one permit and/or requirement we'll have to satisfy. The second is the Phase 2 small MS4 general permit, and really this applies to any projects that are over 5,000 square feet of add or replace impermeable impermeable surfaces. So basically, on a new turf structure or turf field, you know, I think there's some different directions you can go with the design. You could try to create one that's fully permeable. And I think as you bring in a designer, they can kind of weigh the pros and cons of going that route. Or the second option is you assume it's not going to be, and then that water drains off to the side and maybe is then pushed to like a bioswale or somewhere, you know, maybe in a part of the park that's not used as much, and then that's where the water can kind of filter in. And so generally speaking, if you go the bioswale route, it's they talk about 4% of the size of the field is what the bioswale would have to be. So decent size bioswale, and then you have to worry about all the drainage, you know, getting it from the field over to that location. So
no CEQA for a turf field?
yeah, there would certainly be a CEQA document. You know, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't see any major challenges there. Certainly it's preliminary, but you know, obviously we'd look at the species in the area and see if there's any that are impacted, and maybe that adjusts the schedule that we have to construct. You know, the common ones are ridgeway rail and salt marsh harvest mouse, but I don't know what the nearest marsh is to that area. It's
I mean, I was asking because of the canal that's back there and wondering
yeah,
California
certainly.
Department of Fish and Wildlife or anybody
Right.
else would be involved.
Right. So certainly, you know, something we'd have to take a look at, and if there's close proximity to those two species, there's exclusion fencing that you can put up for the mice. You would also typically try to avoid their nesting season and work from, say, September to February. Those are kind of the common things you could do. That's if, you know, they're within the zone of influence. If they're not, then, you know, then you don't have to worry about it.
Do you feel like it would be out of the question to drain an impermeable turf field to that canal?
Yeah, I don't think they would allow it without being treated.
Right.
So yeah, you would first set up your kind of bioswale treatment area, and then, you know, at that point it can, you know, just kind of dissipate into the soil.
Right.
And then only in high flow events would it, you know, it might overflow and then go, you know, go somewhere else. But yeah, you try to avoid direct flow into the waterways.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess in the long run, artificial turf would definitely save on maintenance, right?
Yeah, it would, but there's still some.
The issues with the drainage and all that kind of stuff. But I guess in the long run, artificial turf versus grass.
Right. Well, then you still have to fluff it. So after every play, there's a Zamboni, if you will, will come out and fluff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's something you also could finish.
Yeah, a big power broom.
Yeah.
So just a general question about the bidding you were talking about before. Are you guys bound by law or by town policy to choose the lowest bidder if you have a competitive bid? Or do you have any leeway for knowledge of past practices of a company to select a different one?
Right. So when we're over 60,000, it's lowest responsible bidder.
And do you
So-
ever bid anything lump sum, or is everything time and materials?
No, typically it's either broken into specific line items or lump sum.
Mhm.
I most often go with kind of a broken out line item schedule.
Mhm.
Gives you a little flexibility in construction without having to completely renegotiate everything.
So you're not suffering from a lot of change orders in general in the
Right, it
department?
makes change orders easier. You know, let's say you've got a soccer field and then you think you're gonna need 10 storm drains and 200 feet of pipe. Well, all of a sudden you need 12 and 250. If you have those line items with the unit price quantity, it makes it real clean and you kind of preserve that competitive price. Whereas if you don't have that, then you gotta negotiate.
Right. I guess on the flip side, my question was more, if you go for the lowest bidder and they bid the project and it's time and materials, and then they go way over their bid and it ends up being more expensive anyway, maybe they weren't the lowest bidder, they were just bidding low. So I guess the way you mitigate that is the lump sum on certain contracts where they're going to deliver at that price, period, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I think even the low or the force account or the time and materials method, I don't think you could do that beyond $60,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other projects?
Tons of projects, but these are the ones in the parks. So yeah.
I'm going to open up for public comment because I believe you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. Warren Jones, 474 Chapman, just up the street. I was coming to talk about the basketball courts, but I'll just throw in the vote for the turf field.
Okay.
Because there's such a paucity of field space for kids in Marin and sort of being down and I'm a coach on the court there. The fields are as good as they can be, but a turf field would be tremendous.
Okay.
Basketball court, some kids play basketball, and my son here, Griffin, loves basketball and soccer. There's a futsal, it's basically indoor soccer, that they can have any sort of basketball court. So my thought, and I was talking to Emily Hoffman about it, is just make sure that the goal for the basketball is a gooseneck design, so that there's space underneath that goal to put in a little soccer goal if they want to play futsal.
Okay. You're getting that right, Mario?
Yeah, I have
Thanks.
I have
It's
the
also, it's just instead of the pole going straight into the baseline,
It's,
the pole goes up and then over, and then the goal is where it normally is, but there's space underneath that. It's also safe for the kids because they don't run right into the pole.
right. Okay.
That's
All
all I
right.
had.
Thanks, we appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
One
Thank
thing,
you.
don't set your expectations too high on the turf field.
I know.
We're probably about 2 years
Yeah.
plus
Yeah.
away. There's funding involved. Again, you heard there's a lot of moving pieces, but I think at least there's a discussion now about it
Right.
more than there has been in the past.
Yeah, it's just amazing, given the resources in this county, how few playing fields there are.
Yeah, especially ones with lights. We're not going there though.
Oh, yeah. Well, I see the only playing space I think I know of around that has lights is the tennis courts. I can see that right now.
Don't laugh. I noticed Redwood, the lacrosse fields, they've been lighting them at night the last month or so.
With-
They-
yeah, with
they-
little,
portable lights,
generators
yeah.
and stuff,
I'm sorry, we got off track. Thank you. I'll close public comment. Did anybody have any questions? No? Okay, we appreciate your time.
Yeah.
We don't expect to see you every month, but maybe just once in a while.
Yeah,
Just so we get updates on project and what's going on, we'd appreciate it. And we can bump you up so you're not, we don't want to tie up your time the whole night, so, but we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
RJ, Jamie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys coming down.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mario's, your report?
Yeah, gonna just give you a couple updates on rec center and the gym, a couple special events, but want to mention, and part of the reason I mentioned is because we were going to be talking about the fee resolution, but we have a lot of events that are being requested to be inside the community center, which is wonderful. There are varying types of events, from very wonderful community outreach type events to private events to commercial events, fundraisers for schools. There's just a lot of different types of events that exist, and I mention it because we are going to be talking about the fee resolution, and it's pretty pertinent to how we run the operation of the community center in terms of how we are able to collect revenue for offsetting costs of maintenance as well as operations. So a lot of great events that are coming up, though. The Lions Club just had their crab feed, which is great. It was very well attended from what I understand. We have the Women's Club rummage sale that's coming up this weekend. We have the Redwood Night of Blues that's coming up next week or the week after, I can't recall. And then we roll into our community events that the Park and Recreation Department operates, which are the Daddy Daughter Dinner Dances, Mother Son Dinner Dances. We have 3 of those. And start rolling right into our spring season with Breakfast with the Bunny, and then our Mother's Day Tea, and then our Father's Day Barbecue. So the springtime's a really great time of the year for the community center because we do have a lot of activities going, a lot of events. the parks, the fields are opening up, or the fences are coming down, there's more users out in the park as the weather gets better, so it's great. The Neil Cummins Gym, conversely, as being an indoor sports facility, starts winding down usage. The majority of the groups that use that facility will be tapering off during the month of March. Usually by the end of March, the majority of the heavy users are done. So there's a lot of ebb and flow, as you are all familiar with the different activities that go on with the community center. So wanted just to mention a handful of those, and we will be looking at having Shanat Rodriguez, our summer playground director, come in front of the commission probably in April, if not May, if we do have a May meeting, to talk about the upcoming year as well. So just want to give you a heads up on that. If there's anything else that the commission would like me to talk about, I'd be happy to.
Any questions for Mario? No? Okay. Moving business, item 6.1, summer program preview.
Yeah, so just, we don't have a draft of the brochure yet, but I did want to, Brian is also out sick. Sorry, make sure I'm looking at the right, sorry, I'm make sure we're looking at the right document. But he did give me a snapshot of what we're expecting. As we talked about in the past, we have a lot of activities coming up in the summer. Kinder Readiness Camp at Neil Cummins in the Cove. That we just did at Neil Cummins last year, and it was a huge success. We are looking at expanding that program to the Cove as well. We also have already received a lot of questions about the timing of that, and also just want to make sure that the Commission's aware that this program will come out the second week of March. The week of March 11th, I think, is when we're expecting our print edition to come out. We have tennis camps, we have our AARP classes, Tech Explosion, which is science class that we've had in the past, camp actually, skateboarding camp, Super Soccer Stars is a toddler soccer program that we have had on and off for about 2 years, I want to say. Some of that operates outside in the park, some of it operates inside the building. Aikido, Skyhawks, we're still in negotiations with them. I'm not 100% sure that they're going to be included in our brochure, but we did include them just for the purposes of conversation. We have some dance classes that are coming up, some singing classes as well. Summer playground, of course. Our chili cook-off that we're looking at doing in August. Our 2 movie nights that we work together with the City Larkspur Park and Rec Department. Our speaker series that we work with Age Friendly Corte Madera. And then, of course, the programming that we will be working with inside the Intergenerational Center. I also did want to give a very brief update. This is nothing that's totally solidified, but the town is actually looking at taking over operation of a small dance studio that's inside the center that's right across the street where Pet Club is, and there's a nice dance yoga studio that maybe winding down in terms of its operation. So it's set up for dance classes, ballroom dance classes, yoga classes. So working with the city manager and the current tenant that's there to possibly offer some programming there and work with some of the current users to expand on that. And that's so that'd be an additional facility that we don't have right now. Again, none of that's solidified completely, but we feel pretty strongly that we're going to be able to make something work. So it's something that'll be added for the late spring probably, and summer, and then fall ideally.
If that happens, that would be exclusive for dance and yoga type thing, or would there be other types? Again, I don't know the space.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a mirror dance studio type of environment.
Okay.
So at least in its infancy, we probably would keep it that way.
Where is it?
It's the last. It's the last space that is at the end of, if you go to the back area of Pet Club in the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
So the very corner where the fence ends.
So you go down, make a right?
Yeah, exactly. You just go down and make a right. It's the last. It's a really nice space. It's great. It's a good size. Brian and I have looked at it, and we're brainstorming on what we can do there. So it might be an added facility, which would really add a lot of dimension to our offering. So hopefully that's something that we can look at doing.
Any questions for Mario? No? Thanks, Mario.
Yeah.
flip pages. Okay, it's 6.2, discussion on possible action of 2019-2020 fee resolution. Do you want to talk about the changes in here?
Yeah, so what I'd like for the commission to do is look at the worksheet, the Excel spreadsheet that I gave you.
Number 8 font.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of fees. I want to work off that and be happy to answer questions. There is actually one omission from that, which would be up for discussion. But the last column you see there are the proposed changes. We're adding a few things. We're looking at adding a few things. One is a rate for Corte Madera NRGs. The idea behind that change would be to provide, as I kind of mentioned in my oral report, is we do have a lot of requests for social events, and which is great that we're happy that the community is using the space, but there is a cost associated with that. Staff's making the recommendation with the Executive Advisory Committee that we would include the Corte Madera NRGs in the fee resolution and give them a 50% off of the current resident rate. The next increase in fees would be the use of the Neil Cummins Gym for St. Patrick's CY volleyball from $27.50 to $35 an hour. The next one down, which for some reason is not on the sheet, we'd be looking at increasing Twin Cities Little League and Twin Cities Girls Softball hourly use of the outdoor fields from $15 an hour to $20 an hour. And then the main, the bulk of the changes and discussion would be regarding our summer playground program. Now, the main part of the conversation has to do with the changes towards the definition of residency for the program itself. In the past, we have had the requirement for residency be based on the distinction of county and non-county residency. Over the past 24 months, we've had conversations regarding the budget, the revenue base for summer playground, and staff is recommending that we make a change to the residency definition from county, non-county to Corte Madera Larkspur residents, as well as students of the Corte Madera Larkspur School District. And I think that in terms of thoughtful process and thoughtful analysis of the program itself, I think that's something the commission is what staff felt the commission would be interested in. It's certainly up for conversation, debate here. So I do want to explain the changes that are being made to the fees itself. As we have heard in the past, the summer playground population is probably upwards of 55% non-residents of Corte Madera or Larkspur. And what we've done is recommend an increase in the fee for the non-resident rate, which the residency definition is being changed. But we're actually lowering the rate for the non-resident definition, with the idea being that we're phasing in the non-resident increase. So last year, the non-Marin County resident rate was $850 per child. This is the standard rate. Now we would be looking at lowering it to $750 per child, but we're also going to be including a much larger majority of the population in that. And we've made the changes towards to the sibling discount as well. We've increased the daily drop-in fee to $5 more from 50 to 55, and the weekly fee from $175 to $185. The other major change in the fee resolution is regarding discounts to town employees. We've itemized out that Town of Corte Madera employees would receive free use of summer playground, as well as employees of the Central Marin Police Agency, as well as the Central Marin Fire Department. That's something that was not itemized out before, and considering the the different agencies that are involved now, is, since some of them is separated from the town and created separate entities, we thought it appropriate to list that out. Those are the substantial changes to the resolution. Be happy to answer any questions about any of the fees, and expand on any part of that conversation.
And I don't know if you covered about programs for employees or 25% discount.
I apologize,
So
yes.
that's okay.
Yeah, so we did talk about, I'm sorry, yes. In the past, we have offered varying discounts for employees for different programs, and staff and the Executive Advisory Committee are recommending that employees receive a 25% off of any program or facility rate. And we put there with a caveat, unless otherwise noted for particular programs, which would mean the summer playground program. Now, that's something that's different that we have not had before. Thank you for that. Sorry.
Questions for Mario? Comments?
So Mario, in a very general sense for summer playground, monthly rates for everyone is dropping and weekly and day drop-in rates are increasing. So do you have a sense of what that will do to revenues? Will they break even, or some going down, some going up?
So we anticipated two things. One, that we'd be looking at approximately a 20% growth in summer playground from last year. And we actually probably anticipated a little bit more than that, but with the price increase for what would be half the population of summer playground that already exists, we knocked that down to 20%. So we are expecting to have an increase, a revenue increase, which would approximately be around 10%, is what we've estimated.
Why do you expect that much more participation?
The trends that we've had over the past several years in
So it's
terms
been growing 20% every year?
no, it's actually been growing more than that.
More than that? Okay.
But in terms of how we want to be respectful of the fee structure that we're recommending, basically what it comes down to is folks that were considered residents last year are not going to be considered residents this year. And maybe that's only effective inside the fee resolution, and people don't really would see that, but the way that we advertise that and the way that we gain attendance to the program itself it's going to be a little bit of a, I want to say, sticker shock. I mean, which is why we chose to phase the increase.
Mm-hmm.
But we still think there'll be an increase. And I will say that, and then this is something that, if you recall, we can look back at the summer playground presentation from last year, the wrap up. But we did, I would say, I think it was approximately, I can't remember the exact number, but there was a substantial amount of revenue that was gained from the weekly and daily drop-in rate that we hadn't had in the past. I think it was somewhere around $20,000 that it wasn't something that we'd had before, so, which was interesting.
Questions? Is the drop-in daily and the weekly fee, are those for resident and non-resident both?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then, maybe I just can't wrap my head around this. Section 2, where there's two paragraphs, A and B, and it says residents shall mean the following. A's taken out, right? That's redlined out.
Correct.
Okay, because under B, it says, for the use of the other facilities, et cetera, other than the areas mentioned in A above, but there's no more A, right?
Okay, so we need to make a note on that, yes.
Okay. Do me a favor, change reader board inherited to digital marquee.
Did I
There's a
miss
couple.
one? Okay,
There's
which
one in
one?
paragraph B, and there's a couple others on the, where it actually says digital marquee, it says reader board.
Under it.
Sorry, pet peeve.
Which is currently out of commission, by the way.
What's that?
I saw that it was
Yeah, what
all
happened?
It's
What
not
happened
working?
to it?
We'll
Let me
take
go
that-
back to director's reports and I'll give you the update.
Take that one offline. No questions for Mario?
I do want to add a couple things. The user groups that use our facilities, Twin Cities Little League and Twin Cities girls softball, they understand the need for the town to increase their rates over a period of time. One thing that we talked extensively about was being more proactive about doing this in a phased environment as opposed to increasing $5 every 8 years or whatever it is. But so in terms of consideration for the future, I think it's something that the commission, we talked about, the executive advisory committee and myself talked a little bit about how we would look at doing the fee resolution at a potentially different time of the year, and looking at different fees. And I think it's important for us to consider the other user groups in terms of how we want to classify different youth sports groups. And maybe it would require a little bit more reporting from staff's end in terms of like how much they use and the types of facilities they use and how much wear and tear they have on the facility as well. So I am fully in support of the recommendation of increasing the fees for Little League and softball from $15 to $20 an hour. I just think it's something that we should maybe have a more ongoing conversation about moving forward, that's all.
What happened to the fees for intergenerational center?
So they will be included in the fee resolution. I didn't put any data on the spreadsheet about it, but so the fee resolution, the fees for the membership status of the Intergenerational Center, the Corte Madera Age-Friendly Intergenerational Center, will be included for the commission to discuss in the future. They've already been set for the year 2019, which is part of the reason why I'm mentioning that we're going to need to talk about the fee resolution at a different time of the year. It will be included in the fee resolution. We are not going to be discussing that fee at this point in time, but it's something that staff feels strongly that the commission should have oversight on in the future. It's a newer thing for us, so it wasn't brought to the commission beforehand, more based on timeliness, but it's something that we'll be discussing for the upcoming year, probably in the fall.
So it will be in here?
But it will be in the,
Okay.
yes.
And just to clarify, the fee resolution is on a fiscal year, July to June.
Yeah, thank you.
Their fees are on a calendar year, January to December. So that means what's going to happen is probably in September, October, we're going to have to discuss at that point in time if we want to, what we want to do with their fees, either leave them the way they are or increase them, because that would happen for January.
Yeah.
So it's off kilter a little because of that, but it is what it is.
And you'll be receiving a report, ideally before that, or maybe alongside that, from the Intergenerational Center Task Force on the status of their membership and their revenues and expenses as well during around the same time.
Yeah, one thing, when the Executive Advisory Committee met, we talked about this. We're looking to see if we can get an explanation of how they work, because it's almost like there's a nonprofit that's running that, yet it's under Park and Rec, but it's a nonprofit. It's somewhat, I think it's convoluted the way they operate. So I think we're looking to have them come to explain to us and also provide a budget, because while they're kind of operating separately as a nonprofit, let me know if I'm wrong, to fund programs, they're using staff time, Park and Rec staff time, that Park and Rec's not getting reimbursed for. So there's an outlay of money, but there's no money coming in to cover that because it's from a nonprofit. It gets convoluted. So we've talked about having them come and explain that to us and also seeing what their budget is. I'm not going to open up for public comment because there's no public here. Does anybody have a motion to approve the fee resolution with the changes we noted to Mario and recommend to town council that gets accepted?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Great. Commissioner Nelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps?
Yes.
Commissioner Weingart?
Yes.
Commissioner Engstrom?
Yes.
Commissioner Blumgren?
Yes.
And Chair Casissa?
Yes. 6.3, review of mid-year budget.
Sorry, real briefly, just for the commission's knowledge, so I will be taking the fee resolution recommendations to council for their March, I believe it's March 5th meeting next week, so just to give you guys a heads up. I included a very brief summary and worksheet, our budget worksheet. We have a new budget format, which has been very useful, and I really appreciate all the hard work the finance department, the town manager has, and the training that we received on it to be able to help be able to manage our budget and and understand our revenues much more closely. The snapshot of this, as you can see, our general fund is expended at approximately 50%. And our recreational fund has been expended to approximately 80%. Now, these numbers are based on, I did make a slight error on this. It says July 2018 through December 2018. This is actually through January 2019, so it's a 7-month snapshot. I do want to make sure that, and I'm actually almost doing this for my reminder, but to understand the budget a little more in depth, the general fund is money that the town has dedicated to the Park and Recreation Department that does not need to be recovered. Meaning that is the subsidy that the town is giving the Park and Rec Department to spend for its operation. Includes salaries, includes operational expenditures, maintenance, utilities to some extent, certain operational staffing. The Recreation Center Fund, that the requirement and the goal is to make that fund fully funded, fully cost recovery. So any programs that we spend money on, whether it's summer playground, whether it's our Corte Madera FC soccer program, camps, clinics, whatever it is that we do throughout our events and our programs throughout the year, the operation of that comes out of the recreation fund. And the idea is that we would recover in whole that total amount of what's you see there. The total budget for that is $585,561, and we are anticipating revenues over $600,000, which would mean we're planning on recovering all of that. And the detail for all this is in the worksheets below. And the nice part about the new finance system is that I'm able to go in, which is actually one of the reasons why this was not brought to you last month as planned. We're able to go in and look at all these different accounts and see where our expenditures are. So in detail, you can see, what contractor has been paid for what, maintenance items that we've expended, summer playground activities, programs, salaries, equipment. You're able to see all the detail for all the budgets, which is of great benefit because we're able to catch a lot of mistakes that are made, and we can make those adjustments accordingly through the finance department. So this is a very detailed picture from fiscal year 2018-19 from July 1st through January 31st. And the summary is this first 6 lines that I gave you. This is something that we're looking at reporting to the commission, and we'll refine the format that we do. And I think I'll be working with the executive advisory committee on how we will present this to the commission. I think this is of really specific importance, and we'd be, looking at doing this quarterly, maybe 3 times a year. But I'd also be happy to answer any questions about how our particular end of the budget operates. But I think the main point I would like to make sure that the commission is aware of is the difference between the general fund and the recreation fund. The recreation fund is what holds the bulk of our programming, facility costs, et cetera, and the general fund is what houses our more operational costs that stay more static.
Salaries.
My salary, some specific costs that take to operate the facility itself, janitorial staff, copiers, things like that. So I know this is a very broad stroke of this, but I also think it's good to start the conversation so that we can look at how we can best bring these numbers to the commission in the future and how we can talk about those.
Go ahead.
This
you're
also
on-
does not include anything to do with capital expenditures, I should say, as well.
So you're on course to hit what the goal was when we talked about breaking out the general fund and the recreation, and the goal was to make the recreation fund break even at least. Amazingly, the expenses are 468,000, the revenue's 468,000. You're
Yeah.
right there right now, but looking to go positive in the revenue by the end of June and make the town manager happy.
Yes, exactly. That is the goal, and that's what we're looking at doing. So we're, I'm pretty confident that we're, I almost want to say we might exceed that anticipated $606,000, but I'll be conservative and say that we're gonna be right there.
So that 606,000 is the anticipated revenue, but do you have an idea of what your anticipated expenses are? Because we still have a few months to go.
Right, so that's, I'm glad you asked, because I think that's one thing that's, that reads a little odd on the summary, was that we are 80% expended on that recreation fund. I'm pretty confident, I'm confident that we're going to exceed the budget amount, but we're going to exceed it by, we will also exceed by the revenue that we receive. So the extra expenses that we anticipate incurring will be offset by a higher revenue.
But you don't have a ballpark number of like those extra expenses that you anticipate, you know, coming down?
No, and we will in the future. I do want to say that this is a new format that we're operating under, so it's new to us in terms of how we separate out our different line items.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to work with the commission on how to sort of better present this for better analysis and further understanding. I mean, the detail page that you have up there is just mainly a backup so you guys can see it. It's interpreting those numbers is really what we need to get down into, and I think when we really dig into it in terms of conversation, how to best present that to the commission, I think we'll get to a better place where we can format that more appropriately for your information.
Right. And I think along the same line that Sarah just said is that, because if you look at it logically, so 80% of the expenses have already been expended, so it only leaves 20%, but yet we have 5 months to go in the fiscal year.
No, and I think that's really important that the commission understands that we do have highly seasonal flowing revenues and expenditures. We have from, let's say, the Park and Rec staff point, we have a lot of high expenditures during the fall season for outdoor activities, but we have literally none during the winter.
So it tapers off.
So it tapers off to a certain extent, and then we also traditionally have not had a ton of revenue come in for outdoor facilities during the wintertime, although we are trying to change that. And the bulk of the majority of those revenues come in for certain programs in the springtime.
And will this still be skewed for summer playground because it's split? Because the way the fiscal year cuts off.
It's always going to be
June
like that,
30th? Okay.
and how we do report it and present it to the commission will be totally accurate to the program.
Okay. And I have one other question. If you can flip down one of these charts, there's a thing in here about Corte Madera FC sports supplies. It's showing like a negative 335%.
Make sure I get to the right line item.
I think it was
here.
page 2 of 7. I'm not going to go through all these. That one just stuck out.
Yeah, so it essentially means that we've overspent what we originally budgeted for that line item.
Okay, yeah, because it says budgeted 10 and spent 45.
Yeah, so that's what that means, is that we've overspent it.
Just sticks out.
that.
For what item was that for?
Line 630 in the middle of page 2 of 7.
Page 2 of 7 towards the bottom.
That's another one. Yeah, there's a couple negative ones that are just overspent.
Yeah, because theoretically it should be, these may be, some of these should be like just 50%, right? Because,
Well,
and again, it's just theoretical.
No, absolutely, and that's a perfect example of something where like we've overexpended that budget, but the anticipated revenue for that specific program has been more than anticipated.
Okay.
If that helps at a very
Well, probably also, I'm just looking at the expense side, the revenue probably more than offsets this, right?
right. So if you look at program per program, the revenue for that program will exceed the expenditures for that program.
So I have a question along those lines. Theoretically, when these get run, can you run, and I'm not saying for us, I'm just saying in general, because I think we need to look at what we want to get. Can you run reports on like that so you could go, here's Marin Soccer, here's the revenue, here's the expenditure? Again, I don't know if you would know how to do that or finance director.
Yeah,
See what
no.
I'm saying? Because it seems like the data's here is just a different way of extrapolating it.
I have access to, so the department heads have been given access to the budget and meaning the reporting of it. And like I said, so just going back one step, the reason this wasn't presented to you in January was because when I went through the budget, there was mistakes where basically bills were miscoded. There's things that were in the rec fund that should be in the general fund. So I went through it line by line, made those changes, and that's why you see handwritten edited notes from our finance director who made some of these changes
Right.
for us. So yes, the point is that I can look up right now exactly within, let's say, a 7-day window
Right.
of accuracy, what's been expended on each specific line item, and then also what revenues we brought in. I have probably a much closer grasp on the revenue side because I'm able to access that directly from our internal software before it goes to reporting to the finance department. But yes, I'm able to very directly look at the expenditures from each program, each activity, and the revenue that goes alongside that.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from Mario? No? Okay. Moving to 6.4 Park and Recreation Commission 2019 meeting calendar.
Yeah, so one thing that we talked about the last meeting was outlining road mapping our calendar year, and I think this is something that we'll probably be doing maybe more in October, November of this year for 2020. We are looking at the dates that our meetings meet and where they fall on the calendar, holidays, et cetera. We have 12 months. We are, I say required, but we are listed to meet on the fourth Monday of every month. And I wanted to mention that the fourth Monday, for example, in May is Memorial Day. And in terms of respecting commissioner and staff's sort of holiday and summer schedules, in terms of conversation of how we want to proceed during like the July and August months, and also the November and December months around Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's up for sort of a general conversation if we want to make sure that we're sticking to all 12 meetings, if we want to look at having 11, 10, or 9, or less, or whatever the commission wishes to look at. So these dates are in front of you, and as the commission requested to discuss, so happy to help where I can.
So I guess the question is, and again, we discussed that, this Executive Advisory Committee, do we want to basically cancel the May meeting because it's on Memorial Day, and then do we want to cancel it to the December 23rd one because of being close to Christmas? Still keep the one in November, though. What we've done in past years is we've canceled the November and December one, but then we met like the second week in December. We kind of split the difference. Where in this case, we would just meet in November and skip the December meeting.
The problem though is that a lot of people take that whole week off. That
Thanksgiving week.
Thanksgiving week.
Yeah. Schools
I
are
think you
now
get
out
poor
that entire
attendance.
week.
I think it's better to do what we've been doing, which is to just have one meeting in early December, either the second or the third Monday of December, and have that cover both. That seems to me to work out fine.
I just really quick on a straw poll, who couldn't, if it was on November 25th, who couldn't make it?
Could not.
Which would give me a
Could not.
probably not.
And I know right now you probably don't know I'm going to be
Yeah.
like, I'm going away, but just a general idea, if you think you can make it, because this would just give us an idea if we stick with this, because I know for me, I don't want to miss 2 months and not have a meeting.
Right.
I just think it's if we get momentum on something, it's out of sight, out of mind, then we lose that momentum. So we have 2.
I can make it.
I would be around, yeah.
I'd probably be around.
Are you saying for the November 25?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, I would probably not be around.
Okay.
okay, so we have 2 not arounds. I would probably be around also.
And Emily thought she would be around, or?
I can't remember what she said.
And we need,
Just for the commissions, just to expand the conversation a little bit, my comments to the Executive Advisory Committee was that we're certainly happy to change dates for meetings. I can almost guarantee you that they wouldn't be on a Monday if we were to move the dates. I don't know if that causes any problems specifically for anybody, but it's just a little bit, with the amount of committees and commissions and councils and that meet, that have a standard meeting, it's slightly more complicated to reschedule a meeting than it is to cancel one. Obviously, that obviously makes sense, but just in terms of how, it's more in terms of what the commission would like to do in terms of how often they want to
Just as
meet.
far as utilization of the space?
Exactly, yeah.
We've also met over in the recreation center also.
Absolutely, we
It's-
have, yeah.
You mean the dance studio?
Marin Joe's.
If it's accessible, we can.
So the question is, what do we want to do? Or what we could do is, go ahead and I want to say next the May one, next the December one, leave the other ones, including November 25th, and then as we get closer to that date in September, if we don't have enough for that November meeting, because people may have more plans solidified, then we make that determination then if we want to move it.
I think it also may be important to consider what is on the commission's agenda
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Right.
if there's something of high priority. Did we bag last Memorial Day also? Does anybody remember?
I don't think it landed on the fourth Monday.
It wasn't on the fourth Monday?
It was not the fourth, I don't believe it
Remember
was.
skipping,
I
yeah.
can check.
Is it on the same day every year?
Memorial Day?
Yeah, 27th, or is it?
No,
It
it's
moves
not.
around.
It
Okay.
moves around, yeah.
Oh,
It was on the
yeah,
fourth
well,
Monday
no, wait a minute,
last
it's
year.
2017.
What's that?
It was on the fourth Monday last year.
Okay, so we may have canceled it, I don't, well, I guess we can look it up
Actually,
real
the
quick.
fourth Monday was.
I don't have,
Oh, wait, no,
Sorry,
that's
why
the
wasn't it?
Tuesday.
no, we had it on the third Monday.
There you
Moved
go.
it.
Yeah, we moved it to the 21st. It was supposed to be on the 28th. We moved it to the 21st.
There you go.
Well, it sounds like people are generally supportive of having 10 rather than 12 meetings.
I think we canceled like the July or the August one.
That's one of the things we talked about at the exec meeting is July and August, and sometimes there's some important things to do then,
Yeah.
but sometimes people are gone. If we cancel May and then cancel one a couple months later, that could be a problem.
I won't be here June or July.
Lucky.
So what do we want to do?
Should we try to move May like we did this past year?
I think this is helpful because I think the more advance notice that we have to move it, the better. But again, it's totally commission's decision.
We can either move it or just cancel it.
It's totally up to you.
I would suggest just doing like what we did last year, is try to move it to the third Monday if possible.
Yeah.
Do you know, I don't know if you can tell right now, otherwise we can take it offline and we can figure this out again. I'd rather just hash it out tonight, scratch that. Do you know if there's any meetings the third Monday in May?
I'd have to look, I'm not 100%
Seems like everybody
sure.
kind of meets in the first couple of weeks.
It's not flood control.
Is that May 21st?
20th.
The 20th.
Let's see if I can do it quick.
And we could try to do that, and then next the December 23rd, and so just have one canceled meeting during the year.
Yeah. And then again, if worst comes to worst, if we get closer to November and we figure out either one, we're not going to have enough, then we can figure out what do we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, our thought around doing this was everyone being able to put it on their calendar well in
Right.
advance and just decide at the beginning of the year, before the year starts, here's when all the meetings are going to be, and here's the canceled ones, and then we don't have to fiddle during the year, but it might be hard to decide a whole year all at once.
Yeah. Yeah, and last year we canceled the August meeting.
There is something on the third Monday, I think.
For
I'd have to
this-
double check.
This facility?
For me.
Yeah.
Can we?
Looks like it might be an NRG meeting.
Here?
Not ours.
Hmm.
We meet on Sundays.
Oh, it's a Sunday. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was like, I'm looking at your wife's name.
We're the one.
No, we're not doing the Sundays.
Chapman Meadows NRG. There's a tentative booking for, I believe, a NRG meeting that night.
It's tentative?
This isn't my calendar. It's Rebecca's, so I don't want to say one way or another. I can ask her, but I mean, so yeah, this is just a
Well,
quick thought on how this
Is
works.
it-
That's all.
Can you look for a feasible date for that? Because we're obviously not going to do it on Memorial Day.
Right.
Pretty much,
Correct.
right?
Right.
So therefore, look for a feasible date around then. I mean, doesn't necessarily have to be a Monday either.
Right.
Could be the day after Memorial Day. So if you look for a feasible date in
That's
that
Planning
general
Commission.
time frame.
It's planning commission.
Okay.
The Tuesday after is Planning Commission.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if
So
we-
you'd be looking at a Wednesday. Any of the Wednesdays in May could work, if you wanted to.
To
Again,
me, a Wednesday doesn't matter.
Matter to me.
No, it's fine with me.
So if you do the Wednesday after Memorial Day,
Or how about the Wednesday? What do people usually take, the week? If somebody took a full week, or is there school?
There's school.
There's school.
It's just one day
So
off.
that's not
yeah.
an issue. Yeah, okay, so it doesn't matter, before or after Wednesday.
So it'd be the third Wednesday, fourth Wednesday.
fourth, well.
It'd
not
actually be the fifth
necessarily.
Wednesday.
It'd be the fifth Wednesday.
Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4.
There you go.
Fifth Wednesday.
That's the 29th.
Yeah.
again, I'm looking at the council chamber's calendar, which is just a look at, so I'd have to contact Rebecca to make sure that was.
But shoot for May 29.
Why don't
Give it
you
a shot.
circle back with Rebecca and then see what she says?
Yeah.
You
Okay,
know,
if it's available, is that something?
But it sounds like we're flexible date-wise, but
Okay, so keep all the dates that are on this calendar,
Except for
excepting
December
December 23rd, axe that one, and
Yeah.
look for an alternate, maybe the Wednesday after Memorial Day.
Yeah,
That makes sense?
yep.
Okay, so that's looking at approximately then having 11 meetings per year.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
And we're skipping December 23rd.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And then I think what we'll do is, maybe what we'll do is at the November meeting, what we'll do is we'll set this calendar for the next year. So we're
That'd be
not
good.
doing it like in March of the, yeah.
Right.
So we're kind of teeing it up for the whole year.
But that's the meeting that two of us are gone for sure.
Well,
That's
we
what
might do it
propose.
on that
The
day.
November meeting. You're gonna, this is your evil plan to schedule.
It's a coup.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
On your birthday.
We're gonna stand for this, Cambridge.
Mari, do we need a vote
We
on the
are
schedule?
not.
We don't need a vote, do we? Okay, good.
Put
Okay.
it
All
on.
right, moving right along. 6.4, approved minutes of January 2019.
I have a correction.
It should be 2019, by the way, in the agenda. I'm sorry, okay, any corrections, additions, changes?
I think Candace's name should be spelled correctly.
Thanks.
Agreed.
Anyone agree with me?
Yeah. Who cares about
There's
it?
no
I
second.
second that.
No second. Oh, well, I guess it's gonna have to stay Canfield or whatever it is, Kane.
All right, you got the
Camden.
first and the last name wrong on there.
Okay, any other changes, corrections, additions? Is there a motion to approve the January 2019 meeting minutes?
I approve.
No, is there a motion, sorry, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Discussion, no vote, call for the vote.
Commissioner Elson,
Yes.
Commissioner Phipps,
Yes.
Commissioner Camden Weingart,
Yes.
Weinhardt, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
got 'em
not
both
even
wrong.
Weingart. Commissioner Engstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Blomgren.
Yes.
And Chair Casissa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Routine other matters, future agenda items, we saw a review of skateboard park rules. And then question for you, which I should have asked you before under your director's report. What's the timing and what's the expectations for Skunk Hollow? And I don't mean getting it done. It's more along the lines that community awareness, or you have a community meeting, how are we going to schedule that stuff out? So we have some kind of timeline.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to discuss with the executive advisory committee. I think that
Okay.
I would recommend that we look at least two outreach meetings between now and the end of June.
Okay.
Um,
I think I brought it up, if possible, you may want to try to do one, because you can get the rooms at Aegis, no cost. You just have to call them ahead of time. If we can to do it, because again, it's not a formal commission meeting.
Well, it would depend on how the commission would like to do that. If it's not a formal commission meeting, or if it's something that is a formal one. I guess that's sort of how we need to make sure that we understand how we're going to move forward with that.
I guess I'm relating it back to the workshop we did for the skateboard park, where it's more just a workshop versus a regular commission meeting. Any thoughts? People think we need to, commissioners, if you think we need to have a regular commission meeting to have a workshop just to get input, or should we have a separate awareness type workshop?
Do we think we'll get the same amount of interest as we would get in a skate park?
I don't know if we will or we won't, but I just want to make sure whatever we do, there's enough awareness that people know what we're doing and what's going on, so that they have the opportunity to provide input on it.
And if we did it at Aegis on a Saturday, most people who are interested could walk there rather than doing it here on a night at night, so.
We have our
In the
energy
neighborhood,
meetings.
yeah.
No, I say they don't charge, I'm just suggesting that because again, it's there, it's free, and it's in the neighborhood. So it's just, I guess we can hash out the executive advisory committee, so. Okay, anything else?
Well, and so are the basketball courts back in our court, because they're waiting on us for design clarification?
I got that feeling from him tonight. Was that your impression, Mario?
Yeah, as we discussed, we do want to make sure that Sean and Will are part of the conversation on how we're going to move forward with design. So with certain requests of using gooseneck type standards, that might be something that we might have an opinion on, or not. It might change the design of the whole thing itself.
So do you think by next meeting there would be a design that would come to the commission? So we can take a look at it?
No, we wouldn't be looking at, there wouldn't be a conceptual design.
Okay.
So
There
they
won't be
don't
one
have-
at all, there just won't be one by
There
next
won't be
meeting?
one at all.
So they don't have any engineering drawings yet.
No. RJ would be the one doing the engineering drawings.
So he wants input from this commission before he does the engineering drawings?
The commission requested that, or maybe I misunderstood, but I believe the commission or the executive advisory committee requested that there be input from Sean and Will on the design, on the final design of what is to be built.
So if we were to get this group or a subgroup at the executive committee with Sean and Will
Yeah.
and with
And
RJ,
with RJ, yes.
we would need to know what the basis of, like what we're physically looking at as far as a
Yeah,
sketch goes.
I think
so-
RJ will have a drawing.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be a conceptual drawing. I think it'll be an engineering footprint.
So maybe that could be just one action item for you, is to make sure he's got something
Sure.
that we can all look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's for
Okay.
sure. The
Okay.
conceptual plan, I don't.
It's not like nice little pictures, like Skunk Hollow Park? Okay.
Okay.
Not like an aerial view or anything?
But
No?
he's not
Okay.
waiting on us for anything right now.
We're gonna we need to schedule a meeting to meet with the folks interested to look at the final design.
And that'll be separate from our next committee meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else from Mario? Okay.
Are there any, are the new lights
So
in
close.
at Town Park?
I was
Okay.
hoping that someone was gonna ask Jamie while they were here.
But there were
No,
like
not
new
yet.
bulbs coming, right?
Yeah, that's what they're looking at doing. Yes.
Let me do it.
Looking at doing, I thought they were already.
I'm gonna
I
go
thought
ahead,
they
let
were-
me go ahead and adjourn, you can take it offline, this way we can kill the recording. Thanks.
No,
They're already ordered.
Jamie's handling all